You've got ideas, you've got ambition, you've got no time, or so you think. I'm Marissa Lonick, and I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. Join me each week as I dive into time management strategies, goal setting and achieving framework, and inspiring guests who are juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Dreams don't work unless you do, and just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't still make it happen, whatever it means to you. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. Hello, mama friends, and welcome back to another awesome episode of the Mama Work It podcast. You guys, this week I'm fangirling a little bit because I feel like the most popular mom in the room is on my show, and I'm not entirely sure I'm okay. When I came across Rachel Sobel's IG account a few years ago, the first thing that struck me was her handle, which is at Wine and Cheez-Its. Wine spelled like a whiny toddler, not Pinot Noir, even though I think they could both totally fit here. Then I started non-obsessively watching her social media content because the algorithm does that, and I'm not a stalker. And I just loved how relatable, raw, and real her content is, not to mention ridiculously funny. Rachel is an award-winning writer, author, speaker, do-over wife, mom to two girls, short order cook, laundress, lunch packer, boo-boo kisser, and chauffeur. She was awarded Romper's 2020 People's Choice Award at Mom 2.0 and is a two-time finalist for Parenting Blogger of the Year in the South Florida Blogger Awards. She's the creator and co-host of the lifestyle podcast Friends Without Benefits with co-host Dale McLean, the in-arena host of the Miami Heat and host of their 2023 All-Star Game. She has work published in two anthologies, including Jen Mann's New York Times bestseller, I Just Want to Hang Out With You. Rachel has written for HuffPost, Romper, Today Show Parents, Pop Sugar, Scary Mommy, Filter Free Parents, Mommy Nearest, and more. She has appeared on NPR, The Doctors, The Tamron Hall Show, and The Kelly Clarkson Show. She is still not fully recovered from Kelly calling her hilarious on national television. Rachel lives in South Florida with her second and final husband, her two feisty daughters, and two dogs that make her lose her mind regularly. Rachel, I cannot wait to chat with you today. Thank you so much for being here.
I mean, every single word, that whole intro just made any sense of imposter syndrome I have for the moment fleet, and then it will come back as soon as we're done. But thank you for that lovely
Call
introduction.
me anytime, girl. Call me anytime. I'm here for you. All right. Well, first things first, I'd love to hear more about your story. Have you always been a writer? Have you always been this cool? Just tell us it all.
I mean, I hope I've been this cool. I feel like at my core, I haven't changed. So I'd like to say, but I don't know. I guess you'd have to ask other people. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to just say a unilateral, make that executive decision that yes, I've been this cool. Writing has always been kind of part of my professional life. My background is in public relations. That's where I kind of spent the bulk of my career before I left corporate America. And that's a very writing heavy job. And I majored in journalism. So writing has always kind of been at the forefront of everything I've done, but I never really branched out to write creative, personal stuff until probably like the last stint of corporate America, where I just couldn't take it anymore. And I started to hatch my plan to leave.
Yeah, got it. I think a lot of moms listening can relate that maybe they've reached a point in their career or in their lives where they're just ready for a change. And amazing that you were able to fall back on a skill set that you were using in a different capacity and then put something super passionate into it. Love that.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because a lot of people, when they ask about, my work history, I think people assume this was kind of like a planned trajectory in terms of how this turned out. And, when I left my corporate job and left the safety of a paycheck and cubicle life and all of that, I really didn't know what was going to happen. I had no overarching plan other than I wanted people to pay me to write what I wanted to write. That was like my mission statement at the time. And so I had no idea it would kind of morph into all of the stuff with social media, because that was all new to me at the time. And so it's been a pretty crazy ride.
Yeah. So what did you do? I'm curious. Were you just pitching articles that you wrote? Were you publishing them on like free sites for people to read? Did you have your own blog at that time?
Yeah, so I started my own blog, and I before I even pitched anything to an outside publication, I was just kind of sharing very funny, relatable, casual anecdotes about my family or my relationship or my kids, very short, probably 200 to 300 word little pieces on my own blog. And then I had a couple of friends who had added me to some writers groups on Facebook, and I kind of saw what everyone else was doing and pitching to outside publications. And the first piece I ever got accepted was by Scary Mommy, which was like the mothership of all mom bloggers when everyone kind of started doing all of this. And I want to say I sent them over a dozen pitches before I finally got something accepted. And that felt like a huge win. And then from there, I think I started to build my street cred with the outside publications that were heavy on motherhood and just started pitching left and right everything that I could to get bylines out there and grow my presence.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because I think people get discouraged the first, the second, the fifth, the sixth,
Mhm.
no or silent response that they hear and they give up. And right then and there, you just said, I pitched a dozen times before I got a yes. And I mean, and look at where that's gotten you. So I appreciate you sharing that.
I think it's a huge thing though that a lot of people don't talk about. I think we listen, if you write something and it resonates with you, I think it's easy for us to look at it and say, "Oh, this is great. Someone's definitely going to want this." But the truth is that the motherhood space in general is saturated and there are so many incredible voices even if they are overlapping in similar experiences, but there's just not enough room for all of us to be published at the same time. And so there's always this ebb and flow of new voices, old voices. And I mean, I've been rejected. I've lost how many times I've been rejected this week alone by things that I pitch out, but you have to kind of I know it's easy to say not take it personally because it's your life you're putting out there, but you kind of have to not take it personally and just move down the list and keep going and then find those places where you know if it doesn't get picked up by a publication that's paying you for your work, that at least you have some places to publish it where you do still have that byline and the SEO juice and all that stuff.
Yeah, great advice. So, Rachel, you talk about motherhood in a humorous, but also a really vulnerable and raw way. What or who inspires you to share your content?
I think it's multifaceted. My mother is my hero. We have always had an incredible relationship, and my mother is as real as it gets. She does not care what people think about her, never has. She's always been super cool. My house was like the hangout house growing up. She's just that kind of mother. So I think I took and I still take a lot of cues from her in the way that I parent my children and just the kind of woman that I am in general. But I think that also when I started my social media accounts and started building a community of people who all just want to be seen for the funny stuff, the heartfelt stuff, the sad stuff, whatever it is, we all want that camaraderie. I draw so much inspiration from the complete strangers on the internet who are messaging me and commenting on my stuff and DMing me because it makes me feel like I'm reaching other people than just those in my immediate orbit and connecting and making these amazing little like relationships and pockets of support that I think a lot of mothers need and thankfully have access to outside of their little neighborhoods. There's a whole internet of people out there who are there for the taking if you can find your path.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, just that positive impact that you're seeing in total strangers is fueling
Mhm.
you. And I totally get that. Hey, do you ever publish or post something and then like second guess sharing it? Because you do share such vulnerable, real, authentic content that's private, some of it,
Yeah.
you know?
All the time. I do, but what I've learned, and I think this is different for everyone, it's a subjective process with what you're comfortable with and where your boundaries lie. I think that I have noticed that when I post something that makes me uncomfortable, it's going to be really good. And I have to get over that initial fear of there's always people are always going to have their opinions, and it doesn't matter how vulnerable and real you are. People will come for you based on one single word in your post that triggered them or something that they're seeing a reflection of their own life that they don't want to accept, and so they come for you. And that's never going to change. So I think once I get over that initial oh God, did I just do the right thing? I know that if I'm feeling that way, it's going to strike a chord with people. And I think I still do it with most of the really personal, non-funny stuff that I post. Because you don't know how it's going to land and you don't know who's going to receive it. And I think we are all hypersensitive to not wanting to offend anyone and not wanting to alienate everyone. And I think that the thing I take with me every time I post anything is I look at it, kind of take a step back and look at it and say, is this going to be offensive to anyone in any way? And if it is, are there words I need to change? Is there anything I need to button up or anything like that? Because I never want anyone to read anything I write and walk away from it feeling like attacked or unseen or misunderstood. And that's a really feels like a really big responsibility sometimes, but I'm thankful that there are so many people who have continued to follow my journey and have that trust in me.
Yeah. Oh, I got chills when you said that because I second guess things all the time. I think writers do in general, right? And
Mhm.
then even when you do, but I like your advice about how, if it makes you sort of uncomfortable, it's like just hit post, just do it almost because you have to get out of that comfort zone, right? But I definitely have struggled with, I'm a really private person in general. And then I write, these very personal stories sometimes on social media or in books and things like that. And once like they go out into the world, I get like the vulnerability hangover the
Yeah.
next day. Like I'm super excited to get it out there. I like know deep down it's going to be impactful, but then I'm like, I just want to hide in this dark
Yeah.
space.
I get that, and you know what it is too, is that you're not only putting it out there, you're opening yourself up to people who you know are going to have something to say, good or bad. Like, it's just that's just the nature of what we do with social media being so prevalent for writers everywhere, and I think that what's really interesting is that look, I could say to you, I could say, "I don't care what anyone thinks," but that's not true. Of course I care.
Mhm.
I'm a human, and there are things that hurt, and there are things that bother me and trigger me, but I've try to rewire myself in a sense where when I put something out there, I don't read the comments ever. Ever, ever. I mean, I read the comments on my own posts, but if it's on a public site, I don't ever read the comments because the biggest lesson I've learned is that most people who are reading content on these outside sites, they're not even reading the whole article. They're reading a headline, which most of the time, let's be honest, is clickbait, right? So
Yes.
they're reading a headline and they're reacting to that, or they're reading the first paragraph, they're reacting to that. They're not doing their due diligence. And so I stopped doing that, and that has definitely been a really good exercise in self-preservation for me. But the other thing is that I have this, I think, very human nature of when I look at the comments on my own posts or my own blog, there's like, I don't know, making up a number, 700 amazing supportive comments. And then there'll be one of someone saying something really nasty or going for the jugular. And all I'm doing is zoning in on that one. And I'm like blocking out the 700 amazing things. And I'm working really hard currently every day when I publish something to get out of that mindset and try and ignore that one comment and focus on the positive. But it's easier said than done.
God, I know that is so messed up that we do that.
I know.
So messed up.
So bad. It's like you have all these people holding you up who are such avid supporters and they're like loyal to a fault and they're just you can tell they're engaged and they're into it and they're like cheering you on. And then you have this one troll who's saying something that probably isn't even accurate, but and you like laser focus on it because everybody at the end of the day, no, you can lie and say I don't care what anyone thinks. I do believe there are people that feel that way, but everyone wants to be liked. Everyone wants to be accepted. Everyone does. And anyone who says that is lying because there's at least a small part of every single person who does crave that acceptance to know that they are part of something bigger than themselves.
Yeah, it's human nature. It's human
Yeah.
nature to want to feel connected and supported and liked. I agree. I
Hmm.
agree.
Hmm.
So let's talk a little more about mental health and motherhood because I know this is a topic you hit upon often in your writing.
Hmm.
How do you think the two are related?
I think that, you can read every book, every article, speak to a million experts and prepare for motherhood, but you really can't prepare because you never really know what your journey is going to look like. And I think that in itself is a mind game because you have this plan of what you think is going to happen. And I think your mental health in general probably takes its biggest hit when you start to get into that motherhood groove and you realize that your life is truly not your own anymore. Your identity is really, really tied to being a mother. And that's okay. That's not a negative thing. I think some of us just have to find our rhythm and our groove and figure out where we live in that space so that we don't feel like our identity is solely being a mother. But the reality is that I think for at the very minimum, for the first few years when you're getting through the newborn and the toddler phase and babies consume everything, babies suck the life out of you. And so do toddlers. And so I think that when you're getting your bearings as a mother, your mental health that's when it's really probably its most vulnerable. And I applaud all these women who come out and talk about the realities of seeking therapy and taking medication or meditation or yoga or whatever it is that is their medicine, so to speak, to balance their mental health. I think that for the first time in a really long time, there are so many women being so open with that. And that makes me have a little more faith in our humanity as mothers, that we're all opening up about those struggles, because I think that when we do that, it gives other people who may not have as strong of a voice the courage to admit that maybe their mental health needs a little bit of work. And I have never met a mother in my life, even if it's someone who loves being pregnant, loves the newborn phase, loves all the things that we joke about not being so crazy about. I've never met a mother who has not struggled with their mental health on some level. Some more than others, some needing medication, some not. I'm just happy we're talking about it. I think it's you know not just postpartum. Postpartum is its whole other thing that needs to be discussed, and could probably be 10 million podcasts tied to that. But just mental health in general, I think, is something that I love seeing myself and mothers in general more comfortable being open about, because I think that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I think there's such power in not just feeling heard with your own voice, of course, but feeling like you're not alone on the journey. Like somebody else is experiencing something similar, or something you felt before, or something you're feeling right now. So you're not like, oh, it's not just me. I'm not
Mhm.
totally strange or abnormal or going through this thing by myself. So
Mhm.
I agree with you.
Well, motherhood is polarizing, right? Motherhood it's as much as you feel like it should be the time your heart is at its fullest, and it is, in the sense that you're bringing this baby into the world that you're taking care of and you're nurturing, and you're going to grow into this amazing human being. But just as a I don't know, as like a general thing, I think that motherhood is very polarizing. It's very lonely. And I think that there are a lot of women that struggle because they don't meet like-minded mothers, or they feel immense pressure from spouses or friends or whatever to do things a certain way. And I think that there's also a lot of self-imposed pressure that mothers put on themselves just because of the way we've been conditioned. And I think that the sooner that we can all accept the fact that we all just do things a little bit differently, and that we can be mom friends with other moms who may not share our parenting tactics or, beliefs, I think that that's when we all chill out a little bit and stop, holding ourselves under a lens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. What advice would you give moms who are possibly struggling with their mental health right now?
Not to ignore it, and not to assume it's going to go away. It might be, you might have, I know the doctors call it the baby blues, or they just use dismissive language and stuff to talk about some of our mental health struggles, and sometimes it is something that does dissipate. But I think if you're struggling at all mentally, I would urge you to talk to your OBGYN or your primary care physician, or if you already see a therapist. But I think everyone should be in therapy, even people who think they're healthy. I think therapy is an incredibly powerful tool that helps us develop a level of self-awareness and insight that is just not possible on our own. And I myself have been in and out of therapy my whole life. I am currently in therapy again full time, and it's a godsend. And I just, for the first time in my life at 46 years old, went on an SSRI because I couldn't handle motherhood and everything that was happening in my life. I felt really like I was drowning. I felt like I was waking up with my chest heavy and having on the verge of a panic attack. And I've never felt like that. So I know a lot of people in my circle have been on meds or therapy way earlier than I was. And some of us get there later than others, but I decided to make that call. And I'm glad that I did, because I'm about, I'd say, a month and a half out from being on medication, and I feel significantly different and significantly calmer, and my anxiety feels more at bay. And I'm glad I made that call. And I just would urge any mother who's even feeling a tinge of it, you lose nothing by just contacting your doctor and putting it on their radar to let them know that you're struggling a little bit. And there's no shame in it. It's actually, I think it takes more courage to use your voice and advocate for yourself than to sweep it under the rug.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, and for sharing your own personal journey there. People need to hear what's happening kind of behind the highlight reel sometimes. And I mean, you certainly don't hide it, but
No,
it's
no. I don't.
but it's important. It's important because a lot of accounts that you do scroll through, you do just see like the good stuff, the filters, the this, the that, and you start comparisonitis and you start thinking, oh, well, this mom's so good at this and that mom's so good at that, or this mom's killing it here, or that mom's, slaying the day there. And you kind of formulate, I think, this impossible comparison of all of these like strengths that all of these individuals have and put them into one and compare yourself on all levels. And then it's apples to, I don't know, not even oranges. It's apples to like, I don't know, like Pop Tarts.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's totally different.
And it's interesting because again, social media is one of those things that's subjective, right? Like we all like to look at and view and consume different types of content. For me, my rule of thumb, and when I talk to people, I say this all the time with social media, is that when you're scrolling, if you come across any account, especially parenthood based, that makes you feel negative or that you question yourself, you unfollow that account, because if you are one of those people that gets so easily swayed by what you're seeing online, which a lot of people do because that's how we consume content now, if there is something that is making you question yourself constantly, or you're looking at their furniture, the way their house is put together, and you're like, oh God, I wish mine was like that. That's when like the negative speak gets in your head. And it's not a matter of surrounding yourself with yesers or people who tell you what you want to hear. But I think that you can never go wrong with surrounding yourself with truth tellers and authenticity, because that's real life. You can only hide for so long before the truth comes out, whether it's you have to face something within yourself or your partner or other people. And I think it's a healthy exercise to unfollow the accounts that make you feel like you have to have unrealistic expectations about your own motherhood journey.
Yeah, so important. So important. I think it's
Yeah.
a good cleanup exercise, even like once a week. Spend 30 seconds, see what your algorithm's showing you. And if it doesn't make you feel good,
Totally.
totally.
And there's a difference between unfollowing accounts that make you feel that way and like unfollowing accounts you disagree with. I think it's unrealistic to think that you're going to agree with something that someone likes me, right? And they follow my account. Does that mean they're going to agree with everything I say? Of course not. And I would never recommend unfollowing someone that you love following because you agree with a certain number of posts, because it's not realistic to think that you're going to see eye to eye on everything. But I think as long as there's a mutual respect there and everyone can see each other's points of view and still move forward in an adult like civil manner, that's great. I think the things that you have to look for with red flags are the things that make you feel bad about yourself. Those are the things that you shouldn't be following.
Yeah, agree. Agree. All right. So you've been a working mom, I'm assuming since the get go, right?
Yeah.
Since your first daughter was born. Okay. So curious, what do you think is the biggest difference between being a working mom, working from home in an office, or working like outside your home in an office? Do you think one's easier than the other? What's your take on that?
So I worked in an office my whole first pregnancy, and after I went back 3 months on the dot. Like when I had my first daughter, I was in the office again full time, traveling a lot, very high demand job that I loved, but it was still a lot. I think I had the perception that working from home would be easier. Um, and in some ways it is. Yes, it's great that I can throw a load of laundry in at noon, or I can, take a break and walk the dog or do whatever. Yes, I have much more flexibility. But the thing that I never thought about working from home that makes it, that kind of tips the scales, is that if I don't work, I don't make money, right? So I'm not getting a paycheck from a company where I have a 401k and I have benefits and I have all this stuff. If I don't write and submit articles on my own time, or if I don't have clients that I'm doing social media for, writing blog posts or ghostwriting, I don't make money. So I feel like I'm working significantly harder as a work from home mom in terms of where I'm spending my time, versus when I worked in an office, I would work really hard and it would suck being away from my kid. And that was the hardest part of that. But then I would come home and work was done. And so I think they're both impossible. I think working as a mother, there's a completely different kind of pressure on us, because men do not face the same scrutiny. And I don't know that they ever will. It's just a reality. And people can pretend it's not, but women are treated very differently in the workplace, than men are, in terms of, even when I was married in my first marriage, if my kid was sick, they didn't call my husband to pick her up from school. They called me, and I went because that was my job as a mother. So I think they're both really, really hard. I definitely prefer working from home, because I will say that the things that I missed, going to story time at my kids' school or being able to go to some kind of PTA event in the middle of the day, I get to do those things now. And I really missed out on doing those things as a working mom. And so I don't think one is easier than the other. I think they are both incredibly impossible and they all come with their own sets of challenges. And I think we all need to show ourselves grace with it. And I think we need to show each other grace and stop making a contest about which is harder.
Yeah, agree. And I'm with you. I feel the same way. I agree with you on all those bullet points because I've done the corporate thing where I'm commuting the rat race to the office every day and then coming home and trying to fit it all in a few hours in the evening, and then now I'm working from home and doing my own entrepreneurial thing, and those points make total sense. And the other one I'll add that maybe you also have felt is I think it was slightly, and I hate to use the word easier, but just like it flowed slightly easier to compartmentalize when you were actually leaving your home, to
Yes.
compartmentalize work and home. Like I could totally disconnect when I walked in my door. I was so intentional about the family time focus because I hadn't been in that physical space for so long throughout the day. And now I have to really work at that sort of drawing a line in the sand between work life and home life because it's here.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that also when I look back in retrospect, I think all the years of working in very high demand corporate jobs prepared me to be disciplined enough to work from home. I don't know that
Yes.
I would have had that work ethic and ability to self-manage and organize and manage my time to be successful working from home had I not had all those years in corporate America working for other people demanding that type of rigid schedules and all that stuff. Obviously, I take a lot more flexibility for myself now, but I think had I not had those experiences, I don't know that I would have been armed with the tools that I would need to be able to execute as a work from home mom.
So true. So true. Yeah. It definitely prepares you for the transition or shifts or just your
Mhm.
own efficiency model of juggling all the things. Yeah. All right, Rachel. Well, we are going to move on now to our lightning round where I'm going to ask you some random, just for fun type questions, just so our listeners can get to know you more personally. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What book are you reading right now?
Oh, I just got a couple that I am kind of all at the same time reading. I'm still in the middle of the Harry book, Prince Harry book. Uh,
Oh, is it good?
it's good. It is good. There's some parts that are a little too slow for me, and so I'm like finding myself skipping some pages here and there, but it is really good and really interesting. I also just got School for Mothers on my desk, which I started to pop open. A lot of people said it's a little bit of a harder read, and so I've saved that for times where I'm maybe not having those mental health things swirling around, so I can be kind to myself. Those are the two that are on my desk right now that I'm kind of jockeying in between.
Nice. Okay. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, that's a really good one. Um, to be in 2 places at the same time. I
Hmm.
have 2 children at 2 very different ages with 2 very different things, and sometimes sacrifices have to be made for shows or recitals or this or that, and the guilt of motherhood in general, but especially between 2 kids in a blended family, is it's a lot, and so if I could be in 2 places at the same time, I think that that would make my life a lot easier.
Yes. Yes, totally. What's something most people maybe don't know about you?
I mean, I always say the same thing for this. So at this point, people probably do know about this, but I will talk about it for the rest of my life because I feel like it's a major feather in my cap. When I was 18 and a senior in high school, I was on a season of MTV's The Grind, which was
Oh,
like a
yes. Awesome fact.
so
Yes.
I missed, like, my last few finals because I was a really good student, I had really good grades, so my teachers let me when I, had the opportunity to be on television, I skipped those finals, and I spent the last few days of my senior year filming in Miami Beach for The Grind.
Oh, stop. Okay, so was like Eric the host at that time?
Yes.
Amazing.
My daughter was scrolling through my phone yesterday because we like to look at pictures and videos together, like just old pictures, and she pressed on that one because I have a picture of me, my girlfriend who was on it with me at the same time, and Eric Nies, and we're each sitting on a knee, sitting on one of his knees, and he's shirtless and hot, whatever. And it's funny, I posted it months ago and tagged him because he's on Instagram, but he's a very like holistic natural yogi now. He's like a totally different person. And I tagged him and he was like, oh, thanks for the memories. And that teenage heart of mine starts like pitter pattering, because if you did not grow up in that era, you can't understand the like gravity of Eric Nies, but he was like, everything back then.
Oh, yeah. The hottie with the body, for sure.
Yes. Yes.
All right. What is your go-to, like, get it done song? Super motivating for you.
I grew up in Miami in the 90s, and so my iTunes library is filled with filthy old school gangster rap and hip hop. And so that's anything. I mean, Biggie, my dog is named Biggie. We are big like 90s hip hop heads here. So
That's
anything
amazing.
by Biggie. And you know what song is kind of like my theme song is not a hip hop song, but it always gets me going, is Titanium by Sia. I love that song. I love the message behind it. I love everything about it. That is like my theme song.
Yeah. God, you have good taste in music. Okay.
Oh, thank
All right. Last question. Last question. Nail salon, hair salon, or spa? You can only pick one to visit for the rest of your life. Which one is it?
Oh God. I'm going to do spa, because if I really had to, I could do my nails and hair by myself, even though they're never as good as the professionals who I love and respect, but I can't give myself like a massage and have that Zen moment. So I'm going to take spa.
True. Yeah. All right, Rachel. Well, this has been such a fun conversation. I kind of don't want it to end, but I know we got to wrap up here. So, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes. So my website is wineandcheezits.com. That's WHINE. And I'm the same on all of social. Wine and Cheez-Its on Instagram, Wine and Cheez-Its on Facebook. Twitter is Wine Cheez-Its. I am rachel.sobel.writes on TikTok now. And I have a podcast called Friends Without Benefits, which is available wherever you podcast.
I can't believe I didn't ask you this, and I'm going to extend this for one more minute. But where did the Wine and Cheez-Its name come from? You have to tell us.
Wine came because, I mean, at that time I had one daughter, but daughters and girls are just synonymous, stereotypically with whining. And I had a lot of that. And Cheez-Its, I am a Cheez-It enthusiast, and extra toasty are my favorite, just FYI. But
Me
I felt
too.
like they're
Yes.
so good. That caramelized cheesy flavor. Oh, they're so good. But the whole, wine and cheese, it like rolled off the tongue. And I'm also a red wine drinker. And so it just felt like there were so many little innuendos and hidden things. And I love a good pun. And so that's how Wine and Cheez-Its was born.
I love it. Thank you. All right, Rachel. Well, thanks again for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and would love if you could take a quick minute to leave me a review on whichever platform you're listening from, and maybe even send a note to a fellow mama friend recommending it. Reviews and recs help this podcast grow and reach more like-minded, awesome moms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button so we can stay in touch, girl. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Mama Work It website, please do. There are lots of free resources and great articles there that can help you with the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. So head on over. Thanks again for being part of the tribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, keep on working it, mama.